Coming up this week in computer hardware, Qualcomm drops the Snapdragon 845, more power and less power. Windows laptops on Snapdragon CPUs. Amazon and Google are fighting again, HDMI 2.1, and we found cheap GPUs. And check out these new cases from SFF Labs. All that more coming up next on TWiCH.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiCH.
Bandwidth for TWiCH is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 443, recorded December 7th, 2017. Snapdragon and laptops and Windows, oh my. This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by iFixit, a free online repair manual for everything. Before you start your next build or fix, head on over to iFixit.com/twit to snag the fully loaded ProTech Toolkit for only $59.99. And check out their array of high-quality parts, tools, and guides. And by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Home plays a big role in your life. That's why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. It lets you apply simply and understand the entire mortgage process fully so you can be confident that you're getting the right mortgage for you. Get started at rocketmortgage.com/twitch. Welcome to TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, TWiCH's weekly show that aims to bring you, well, hardware news, the excitement, the joy, the pain, the trauma. We love mobile. We love laptops. We have occasionally shown love for consoles. But today, ladies and gentlemen, we are showing love for our guest host, Mr. Alan Malventano, here in place of Mr. Ryan Shrout, who is off getting his Qualcomm on at Snapdragon year 2017.
He's on assignment, as it were.
Assignment. No, he's been hands-on with the new, obviously the big news, right? The new Snapdragon 845, the next generation flagship processor, which is the Cryo CPU is now the Cryo 385, the Adreno 630 GPU. They're claiming 30% faster graphics performance. And what's crazy is Qualcomm anticipates, they are suggesting, they believe that the 845 is going to be, and I quote, 30% more power efficient than the Snapdragon 835. That is huge. Probably not as much compared to the screen, but I am very, 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 very curious to see what the Snapdragon 845 does to the next generation flagship phones. So this is exciting. Are you excited, or are you just over phones in general at this point?
I mean, I've been over phones for a long time. Just use them. I only upgrade when it gets too slow. That's about it.
No.
It's a tool.
Shannon was looking at the OnePlus 5T on this week's episode of Tech Thing, and it was crazy. To realize this is, a $500 phone that specs out incredibly similarly to Google's Pixel 2 XL, which costs $850. And, the camera's not quite as good, especially with portrait mode, but same Snapdragon 835, 6 gigabytes of memory, 64 gigabytes of storage. It's amazing. I mean, we're at sort of the tail end of the 835 as a flagship processor, but it's incredible to see these prices come down. Have you noticed anything in terms of performance? What bothers you first? I mean, for me, it's like I start getting jealous about other people's cameras, or in the case of, for me as an Apple user, when I start realizing iOS, with 11 dot something, I'm looking at iOS and thinking like, this is just getting ugly. And I need to, in terms of, for me, it's like operating system failures are more problematic than actual power being present in the phone.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, what I've noticed, what's kind of bugged me in the past is, even though nobody has really proven it, or had the sample size of data to be able to prove it properly, but something happens over time, especially in Apple products, where either the OS gets more bloaty or something, where the older hardware that was working just fine and nice and quick and smooth, a year prior, just kind of goes to crap. And it's the stuff that's annoying, application launches and stuff like that. Even applications that hadn't even been changed or updated in the year now are running slower because of OS changes that don't necessarily agree with the older hardware.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you can run Windows 10 on like 5-year-old hardware, and it'll actually still be decent. But the same does not seem to be the case for phones.
Makes sense. I don't know. It's and sorry, I shouldn't have like put you on spot. Like, what do you think of every operating system ever invented and the eventual decline? Surprise. I don't know. It's interesting also because looking at like Windows on Snapdragon, right? When you're talking about HP and Asus delivering these devices. Now, we're not going to have the problem with the last ARM-based Windows experiment where you would need a special operating system that would be poorly supported and then just sort of get cut off at the knees. But, this is supposed to be like, I will call it stock Windows, and feel free to email or tweet at Patrick Norton to mock me for saying that. But this is like, you're looking at like 12-inch 2-in-1s or laptops, like the Asus NovaGo is 13.3-inch, a 1080p screen, folds around into a tablet, 8 gigabytes of RAM max, 256 gigabytes of storage max, and micro SD ports or micro SD slots, HDMI ports, all around. The Qualcomm's processor and an X16 LTE modem. Snapdragon 835 system on a chip. And I bring all that up because what we've seen with phones is either because either the manufacturers or the carriers can't be bothered. And that is more of a problem the farther down the food chain you go. They can't be bothered to update it. But in this case, you're looking at like, is this going to be a successful Windows project? Will Windows Universal run everything on this? Because it's got Windows 10S on that. And it's also funny because you're going to need to upgrade to a full Windows 10 license if you want to install non-Windows Store applications. This is going to be interesting. It's most x86, not x64 Windows applications. I'm really, really curious to see what this does because you're talking about $600 to $800 for something that's going to give you pretty good battery life and an integrated modem, LTE modem. But I'm really curious to see how these do in real-world testings and how well applications run on them. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it just gets down to, if you're doing simple productivity style things, just like editing documents and, watching the occasional YouTube video or whatnot, and maybe light Photoshop, but you can't get too heavy on this, and you're going to get the best performance when you're using like specifically Windows Store apps that have been compiled specifically for this architecture. Right. Anything outside of that, you have an emulation layer kicks in, and even though it's a 64-bit platform, the emulation layer is 32-bit, so you're sort of limited to 32-bit.
Ken talks
Windows
about
apps.
The emulation layer in his article, and it's just like,
yeah.
It's a Windows machine, but it's not a Windows machine. Well, it's kind of a Windows machine. It's more of a Windows machine than previous ARM-based Windows devices.
I mean, you could sort of think about it as sort of like a pseudo Chromebook. Right? Like you get a Chromebook and you can only do like the things that are, within that ecosystem, right? But at least with this, it's a different ecosystem, but at least you have the ability to run things, maybe not the best performance, but at least the thing will run if it's a 32-bit Windows app. Or at least it should run, provided the emulation layer is, doing everything it needs to do to emulate properly, which I'm sure it does. Otherwise, it wouldn't be to the point where they're trying to sell this thing. And I mean, the price isn't bad, but you're getting into territory where people, you might not get the battery life or the other features, but like you can get a full blown Windows machine, for similar pricing. So it really, it's just yet another product in the ecosystem that might entice some people to get it. But we kind of, Ryan's been toying around with it. Just need to get it in the hands of more people and see what their experiences are to know for sure.
It'll be interesting to see from a security standpoint how it fares, because if you don't do the Windows 10 upgrade with the x86 apps, then they should all be store apps, which should be a little bit more secure, say, than apps you can download in the wild. which will give it a Chromebook-like sense of security, although I don't think it's going to be as secure as the Chrome devices. For example, they're running all over the warehouse here. I don't know. We will wait. We will see. I think that came out this week. Tim wrote it up on PC Perspective. Dell's now operating laptops with Intel Management Engine disabled, right? We've talked about the tremendous security issues and the weight. And this is something that impacts, corporate enterprise kind of managers more so than the average consumer. But Dell provided a statement in response to the IME news. Quote, Dell has offered a configuration option to disable the Intel vPro management engine on select commercial client platforms for a number of years, termed the Intel vPro ME inoperable custom order on Dell.com, basically because they had commercial customers asking for it. And they're like, okay, we can disable this in the factory. And I can completely understand why they would want to do that, given the susceptibility of having your system exploited at a level below the operating system. That's kind of horrifying. You are going to have to contact your sales representative. It's apparently it was accidentally offered as a configuration option at Dell.com, but call your sales manager. System 76, the Linux manufacturer, we actually took a look at one of their laptops. They do some really nice stuff earlier this year. Purism is doing it, but essentially you can disable the Intel Management Engine on new devices if you shop carefully. Patches for it for existing hardware are going to be slowly trickling out over the next several months let's say months. I will be optimistic and say months. Shall we be optimistic?
Yeah, sure.
I don't think you're buying into the optimism here.
No, not really. Mm-mm.
Yeah, well, that could be because of prior issues. One of the reasons I like hardware is because, generally speaking, at some level, hardware is fixable. And this episode of This Week in Computer Hardware brought to you by iFixit. If you're familiar with iFixit, and I hope you are, they really like to take stuff apart and teach people how to fix things. They are constantly posting teardowns and repair videos for popular devices like the Galaxy S8, iPhones, and the Switch. I've not yet replaced any Switch screens, but the number of iPhone screens I've replaced with the help of iFixit is really kind of impressive, if I do say so myself. iFixit's leading the charge in the electronics repair tools industry with their iconic black and blue tech toolkit. It's nice. If you check it out in their store, they're going to walk you through how each piece of the kit was really meticulously designed. You're not going to find a higher quality toolkit like this on the market. And you might be like, oh, it's sleek. It's not really, these aren't real tools. This looks too good to be real tools. Look, there's high quality steel bits and really, really well-made tools on this, and it's only $59.99. Tool roll makes it compact and easy to store. Literally, my wife has one. I have one for the boys. I have one in the office. I have one in the workshop. 64-bit driver kit is the heart of this. All the bits you need for just about any DIY electronics repair. A protective case that keeps your bits organized. Open it up, flip the lid over, flip it upside down. The bits aren't going to fall out. They're held in place, and the whole bit kit itself held in place by a magnetic mat that you can use to hold tiny components and screws, a swivel top magnetic precision driver, and a flex extension for those hard to reach screws like down in the corner of a case. I have used it so many times. Plastic opening tools, spudgers, picks, a suction cup with a really nice handle to get display assemblies off of phones. iFixit's own rubber-handled Jimmy Pry tool, which I really like. You're looking at it right there if you're watching the video. It looks simple, it feels good in the hand, and it is shockingly good at cracking open those little plastic clips that hold case sides together. I like it a lot. They also have electrostatic discharge safe tweezers and an ESD safety strap, which I'm not going to mock this week because Shannon zapped one of our video recorders twice just by walking across the studio floor here in Richmond. So yeah, if you don't want to destroy your job with static shock, which is a big deal in winter in much of the country, they have an ESD safety strap in there. Gets even better because all the iFixit tools are backed by iFixit's lifetime warranty. You don't need to buy something, by the way, to get iFixit's free repair resources. They're there. They're on the internet. They are free. Over 25,000 free repair guides are available at iFixit.com. And if you're not going to buy anything, check out the repair guides. They are amazing. Want to tackle your next hack, fix, or build with the ProTech Toolkit? Visit iFixit.com/twit to snag the fully loaded ProTech Toolkit for only $59.99. Thanks, iFixit. We appreciate your support here at This Week in Computer Hardware and your fight to keep things repairable. Doing a lot of good work. It's exciting stuff. Exciting stuff. Not so exciting. So behind me, there's a monitor which is finally shut down that was actually playing the Amazon Prime Video app on an Apple TV. That popped up this week. Ironically, the same week that Amazon shows up on Apple TV, Google's pulling YouTube from Amazon devices, starting with the Echo Show, and they're going to block it on the Fire TV. Of course, Amazon's going to try to figure out a web-based workaround for that. But this is all because Google's pissed because Amazon dropped the Nest last month, and they dropped the Chromecast back in like 2015, claiming it's not an acceptable user experience for Amazon customers. Which I think politely means that they want people to buy Fire hardware and make it easier to buy stuff directly. But this is interesting. This battle, Movies Anywhere comes out. You can move all your titles across all your platforms. And then, of course, Google and Amazon start taking shots over the bow at each other. Do you care? I mean, are you over this? Or is this? Do you see this as a sign of things getting worse and worse over time?
I mean, I think the whole not selling... pretty much by definition, not selling the products that are competitive to your own product is anti-competitive. No. It kind of looks bad on Amazon, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, sure, they got all sorts of stuff out there, but honestly, I don't get why they're... It comes across to me as like they're scared, but that's kind of ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Because like people own all sorts of different media playback things, and like, so what if they, Fire TV, yeah, there's this Google Chromecast thing. Not everybody wants the Google Chromecast,
right?
But you gotta come across as so like fearful that you don't even want it to be on your marketplace. Then you can't really get away with experience. Then you can't really even get away with saying, oh yeah, like we have everything on our marketplace. No,
right?
No, actually, no, you don't. You specifically limit things on your marketplace. You can go on Amazon and buy all sorts of shady looking stuff out there. That's on their marketplace, but of course, these things that might take a sale or two of their product away is like, oh no, can't have that. Yeah, it really seems silly. Yeah. So I don't blame Google for doing what they're doing, really. Mm-hmm. Like based on if they're basically like, you want to get in a tit for tat, fine, here we go. Game on. We just won't support. We won't support this site that everybody goes to all the time. We just will pull support for that on your products and make you develop your own ways to, get on the site. We're not going to go out of our way to make our platform work on your things, since you won't sell our things on your platform, right? So I mean, I'm kind of on Google's side on this one, really. I don't see any other legit reason. Like, has Amazon said any other reason other than the usability or the customer experience part?
You're not buying the customer experience concept.
I mean, that just baffles me, right? Like, they had a Fire phone, didn't they?
Wasn't that a thing? So well.
Well, it didn't do so well, sure. But could you imagine if it was there being sold, not doing so well, and at the same time Amazon pulled every other phone from their marketplace?
It would be interesting.
Because the experience was bad. Yeah, right. They would go down in flames. So well, maybe not go down in flames, but they would get a lot of negative press, and I'm sure it would end up costing them a decent amount. It'll be a small percentage wise, but it'll be a large amount because given how much volume Amazon does.
At some point, your customers, I think, are also going to get ticked off by that whole process. I don't know. It's going to be curious to watch this one develop over time, because it's also interesting because I'm still writing my review of the Apple TV version of Amazon Prime, but there's some questions as to whether or not you're getting the same resolution and video quality as you get on a Roku box, which I thought was interesting. More news on that when I have it, but I was laughing. Tim Berry wrote up on PC Per. Asus launching the Republic of Gamers Strix RX Vega 64 and 56 OC edition graphics cards, and my immediate reaction was, "Oh, good! Another source for AMD GPUs you can't find anywhere near MSRP." And then much to my shock, I looked on Amazon, and there's a pre-order right now. Well, there's two things going on. First of all, there's XFX is doing their GTS XXX edition RX 580 8 gigabytes RX 580 for $289.99, which is going to be on stock December 12th. I think pretty much everything else is sold out or selling for significantly over higher price. And then Asus's Radeon RX 580 04G dual fan OC edition GDDR5 DP HDMI DVI. I love reading out Amazon names because they include all the words. I apologize. That one's actually selling for $259.99. So, it's not the cards we want, but there are several older cards available. I mean, I laugh because I'm searching for, Vega 56s, and it's punching up 580s is like the only thing in stock.
Yeah,
it's frustrating. Even like 1060s are out of stock. You can buy a 1050. Oh wait, here's like one 1060 in stock. That's a start. I don't know, the whole GPU thing. I mean, is this entirely mining that's driving the GPU sales at this point?
I mean, that's a decent chunk of it. Obviously, you're going to have sales. You're going to have people that just want to buy the GPUs. But, I mean, the mining rates had kind of gone up, like crept up if you watched them over the past week or two. Nowhere near what it was, say back in June or whatnot. That's what caused all the GPUs to get sold out in the first place, was because, you were making back like between like 2 and 5% of your GPU value like per day, which is a pretty crazy return on any investment. So it got to the point where everybody that knew how to build a PC was just like, hey, why don't I just buy a GPU now? But then, the rates went down for considerable, everything kind of leveled out to something a little bit more sane. But then things started creeping up again. Like Bitcoin is going crazy. But back in June, Bitcoin was only worth like a couple of grand or something like that. And now the same share of it, 1 unit of it, was pushing $18,000 this morning, which is just crazy, right? So that kind of interest spreads across all of the other currencies, maybe not to the same degree, but it makes the other currencies that are GPU mineable more interesting. And then more and more people want to mine them. And then, now you get a little bump up again in the demand. So I think we might have come as close as we could to MSRPs maybe a couple of weeks ago as far as GPUs are concerned. Now you've got the mining thing working against it, and you've got the holiday demand working against it, right? Timmy wants a fast video card for his computer for Christmas. So, now it's not just mine.
Might be a little disappointed this year.
Might be, or, well, think about the crazes before, right? Like Tickle Me Elmo craze and all the other crazes. And then you see people list them on, they get their hands on them, list them on eBay for 10 times what they're actually worth. So 10, 20, 30% over MSRP for a GPU for a parent trying to buy their kid something, they might just not care and buy it anyway, right?
Right. I'm looking at the numbers. Like Newegg makes it fairly easy. Like none of the Radeon RX Vega 64 cards are in stock. They don't list any. They don't list any 56 cards. The GeForce GTX 1080 is typically selling. Well, there's 1080 Ti's are selling for 700 plus. 1080s are selling for a little over 500, which seems almost reasonable. Which may be that I've completely lost my mind at this point, or I've been watching the prices fluctuate so much it's hard to tell. But yeah, it's if you're looking to buy a GPU right now, man, it's tough.
Yeah, it is. But it has been on and off for several months now, right? So it's really no surprise. Just all you can do is just don't commit to any one GPU. right? It's just like any one model, try to have like a spread of them. And,
Right.
there's sites where you can track pricing on like Amazon tends to have them for higher prices. Like don't be afraid to go elsewhere. Like typically like Newegg will have GPUs for cheaper than the Amazon rate. Because Amazon is just such a big site now that that's the most common place people are looking, and the price and for something hard to get, the price just kind of naturally goes higher. At least for GPUs, in my experience, from looking at Amazon prices and looking at use I know it's ironic that this is coming up now this way, but purely coincidental. Like just the Google shopping thing, like the indexer, like you find the GPU you're interested in, look it up on Google, hit their shopping tab, and it'll show you what prices at all sorts. B&H Photo and different resellers and different and that's where you find a good deal, right?
I will say, looking at Newegg's prices on the 1070 Ti, it actually is selling for the MSRP. It's selling for $450, so that's actually not bad.
Right. I mean, you can find them. They might not be they're not going to be the nice model with the really nice cooler. It may very well be a base model, or it might be the bottom tier of something with an aftermarket style cooler on it. But for example, what model is that you saw for MSRP?
Gigabyte GeForce GTX 1070 Ti DirectX 12 GV-N107 TWF2-8 GD 8 GB 256-bit GDDR5 PCI Express.
Is it just like an OEM style card?
It's maybe
like a reference.
Maybe a little better than an OEM style card.
Okay, there's a Zotac for $450 with a nice cooler on it, right? So yeah. I mean, they're out there. You can get them.
Search like the wind.
Yeah.
So it's also amazing to look at some of the disparities in prices between some of these boards. So yeah, shop around. Don't just try Amazon. And prices are not anticipated to come down anytime in the immediate future. So, man, HDMI 2.1, the HDMI forums finally released the HDMI 2.1 spec, 48 gigabits per second, which is a huge jump up from HDMI 2.0, which runs at 18 gigabits per second. So don't expect anything running this until 2018. Do expect to buy a new HDMI cable. You're looking at like 120 frames per second for 4K. 60 frames per second at 8K if you're not doing full HDR. 2.1 will be backwards compatible with HDMI 2.0, which is bizarre. But the biggest thing about this one is adding dynamic HDR, enhanced audio return channel, variable refresh rates, quick media switching, quick frame transport, and automatic low latency mode, and display stream compression, which is basically saying making 4K better and getting ready, I think, for 8K and 10K and whatever impossible to buy content for format they can push to the next level in terms of trying to drag your ass back to the big box store to buy another television. But it's there. Don't get too excited. So, which might sound rude, but it's how I feel about it. We should take a moment to thank the crew over at Rocket Mortgage. This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans, ladies and gentlemen. Mortgage experience, not keeping up with the times. It's dated. It hurt. It's emotionally traumatic. Needed a client-focused technological revolution. That's why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. Rocket Mortgage gives you the confidence you need when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. It's simple. You can fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. It's convenient. Trusted partners allow you to share your financial information with Rocket Mortgage at the touch of a button. It's powerful. Whether you're looking to buy your first home or your 10th, Rocket Mortgage is able to perform thousands of calculations in seconds. And based on your income, your assets, your credit, Rocket Mortgage can analyze all the home loan options for which you qualify and find the one that's just right for you. Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Apply simply, understand fully, mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Twitch. That's rocketmortgage.com/TWiCH. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030. And we thank Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans for the support of This Week in Computer Hardware. Oh my goodness, 10th mortgage. I have a friend who's got 3 or 4 mortgages and the best credit of any human being I know, which is kind of crazy.
You kind of need really good credit to have 3 or 4 mortgages.
You would hope. Oh, man. As many of you know, I'm a huge fan of small PCs, mini ITX enclosures. And so one of the machine I built last year, it's really cool, from NFC Systems, the S4 Mini. And the Joshua over at NFC Systems has a new machine coming out. If you go over it also started a new project called SFFLab.com. And the idea is that they are going to work, he and his partner in SFF Lab, Dan Wahaha 360, who you may know from a particularly awesome set of N-case devices. It's pretty exciting. What they want to do there, right there, you're looking at it. If you kind of scroll around in that picture, you see the next generation mini ITX case. And what's crazy about the Skyreach 4 Mini is it's going to be easier to build, which is fun because, again, I like these cases. But they HD Plex came up with a 400-watt DC to DC power supply, so you can actually run like Ryzen processors and 1080 Ti CPUs in this incredibly tiny enclosure. They're beautifully made. He does them with a pre-order where you can basically, you order it, he builds and delivers it to you. They are fantastic. I'm a huge fan of my S4 Mini, and it's pretty exciting to see SFF Lab start, because what they want to do is make it easier for makers to bring these incredible enclosures to the community. So you've probably seen the N-Case M1, which is something I still covet and want to touch because it looks so nicely made. And the Dan A4 SFX is coming. That's up on sfflab.com. So if you're looking for a sort of, really nice enclosure for a mini ITX board, take a look at sfflab.com and what's coming out from the guys over there at N-Case and NFC. So it looks like they are adding some
really nice
stuff there.
It's a really nice design on that. If you skip ahead a little bit in that video that they're playing there, my goodness, it all just sits. It's about as tight as you could possibly get any set of hardware into a box.
Yeah, I have the previous S4 Mini, and I'm going to build a machine with this because it's just nice stuff.
Yeah, it's just a really nice, neat, tidy build. It's pretty good stuff.
It's a good thing. Oh my goodness, Intel. Did you catch this? Fudzilla did the article.
We talked about it on the podcast last night.
Okay.
They're claiming Intel 10 nanometer is better than everybody thinks, implying, in other words, that Intel is like holding back on, that they could make 10 nanometer CPUs, but they're just deciding not to ship them yet. And they also, there's actually, you're just scrolling past it right now. There's this claim in there that a 300 millimeter wafer can cost between $200 and $700. Josh lost it last night on the podcast when that even came up as like what the claim was, because that cannot possibly be accurate. Because if they were able to make any CPUs with the wafer cost that low, I guarantee you they'd be shipping it, because that's extremely cheap for a production of a wafer on any modern process. Realize it's a wafer full of parts. Like there's, potentially, depending on the size, obviously, but it could be 1,000 CPUs on that thing. So if you're able to make them that cheap for the whole wafer, that would be insane margin. So of course they would be selling it for that. But we had a post on PC Per kind of mirroring this one, or at least talking about it. What it really comes down to is just it's whatever the next process is, right? Like if you take Intel's take on flash memory in the past. There's plenty of time when 25 nanometer flash came out. They talked about it, even like showed it to me in a fab. Hey, here's a wafer. Like we're making this now. But we didn't see it in actual SSDs that you could buy for like it was something close to a year. So sure, they're making it, but just because you're making it doesn't mean you're able to produce it efficiently and with good yield. So I mean, while like Josh and the other people on our site, as an example, like we're confident that like sure Intel can do it, but they can't do it cheap right away.
Right.
Maybe that $200 to $700 cost is just like the raw cost of like some part of the process, but you're not talking about recouping all the R&D, recouping all the costs of all the equipment that you needed to upgrade to be able to, produce the feature size of those parts it's 10 nanometer features. Yeah. So it's just, I don't know. I mean, a lot of it's just kind of like, hey, look, this is common sense. Yes, they can make the next thing in the lab right now. No, they're probably not shipping it. But the why is really just, it's more cost effective to sell the stuff that they can make, with better yields right now, which is not 10 nanometer. I do kind of like that the smaller and smaller feature size have more of a copper sheen to them compared to other. And that's actually because you have to start moving over to using copper because you just need better conductivity than just straight silicon can give you. Like when you're trying to get from one side of the chip to the other, like you actually have to use like a better conductor because when traces on a die are so narrow that you risk you risk like atoms shifting slightly and causing problems, right? So I mean 10 nanometer, like this is something as far as feature size goes, right? They were trying to talk about flash memory getting down to 10 nanometer for the size of the cells. This is before all of the 3D NAND stuff started becoming a thing. And there was one picture during I'm sure I've used it in a couple of my pieces on the site, but it's hard to dig up right now. But like they showed an electron microscope part of like here's a channel, here's like a conductor, or just some feature, and here's 10 nanometers, and they showed it, and it was literally you could count the number of atoms across. It was only like a couple of dozen or something. So like it's tiny. It's really dang small trying to get that that small on process tech, which kind of leads me to think that maybe the next step for all this CPU stuff is probably to do what the flash memory is doing and try to figure out better ways to stack layers of circuitry within the die. They already kind of do it, like all the interconnect stuff has its own layer, and like then you have like a layer of the transistors doing the work, but they might have to start stacking layers of transistors on CPUs to be able to, to effectively make the shrink better, or just get more transistors within a certain square area. You kind of have to go vertical at some point. Otherwise, nobody would be using buildings on the planet, right? Multi-story buildings.
So starting to sound complicated, man.
Yeah.
Starting to sound very, very complicated. Oh, man. GDDR6 for AMD's future GPUs, not HBM2, which is almost like the letters that are used in those acronyms. Apparently, I can't say GDDR6 or HBM2, but what's going on with the changes to the architecture roadmap?
So it looks like they just, HBM2 is sort of costly for them. And if you can get DDR6, as we just talked about, a few minutes ago, if you can get high throughput with something that's as simple, with the technology that is much simpler to implement, that the only difference is you have the GPU in the middle, and then you have a few memory chips kind of sprinkled around it on the PCB, right? PCB space is cheap compared to trying to take the memory and integrate it into this stacked parts that sit literally like parked on the same interposer as the GPU. That's
right.
I mean, it was a great idea, and it's implemented. It's in GPUs that AMD ships, but it's still kind of a pain to get right. There's actually been issues with different manufacturers, like you have the chip maker that makes the GPU, and then other different memory chip makers will make the memory chips that are going to be kind of parked right next to them on this interposer. And AMD had issues where some of the heat sinks weren't sitting flush on the GPU and the memory because the people packaging those things together weren't necessarily able to get the top at the exact even height.
ouch.
So you'd end up with some issues where the heat sinks installed by OEMs or just like the resellers like EVGA and the people putting these GPUs together with those parts would have to try to figure out what to do, like where and there was no way to know for sure if you were going to get one that was the flush style from one maker or the slightly offset style from the other one. So kind of like some headaches, right? So if you think about that stuff that's going on there versus the ability of potentially using this memory that could be fast enough to make it so that you don't necessarily need the HBM speed, you can use this DDR6 stuff, goes pretty fast, and go back to the old school way of just having them on the outside of the of the GPU. And to do that, they're going to need some sort of controller, right? So that's why this is a new story now, saying that they're working on this memory controller so that a future GPU from them can speak to this, most likely cheaper memory on their future, on at least this GPU. That's not to say that they're just moving away from HBM and it's never going to happen again. I'm sure there will be other HBM GPUs in the future.
Right.
Maybe even from NVIDIA too, like for all we know, or even Intel if they try to get into the GPU game. Since, if you recall, it was like a few weeks ago now, Raja Koduri moved over from AMD to Intel, right?
That's going to be
interesting things coming up this year, I'm sure.
May you live in interesting times.
Yes.
Oh man, we touched on it last week. Any other thoughts? Anything getting you excited about CES this year? Or are you just dreading the whole process?
No, I mean it's. I haven't seen last CES for storage was kind of like right? Like there wasn't just really groundbreaking stuff. And it almost seems like the storage related stuff has kind of moved away from CES as far as the big announcements goes. That's kind of shifted over to Flash Memory Summit, which is more in the middle of the year. And the really big storage technology announcements that were a thing kind of already happened. We already have the Intel Optane SSDs out, right? The 900p is already consumer cross-point SSD. You can already buy it. We already reviewed it and tested it. That was, a couple months ago. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, if there's anything, at least on my beat at CES, that looks amazing, it's going to be an unexpected, thing. It'll be one of those things that just kind of like takes us by surprise, which are nice. It's that'll make it exciting again. It's just that last year there really wasn't any of those to speak of.
Right.
Occasionally that happens.
We questions we've been getting over at AVXL is I missed the Black Friday deals. Should I wait for CES to buy a TV? When are the best prices? I'm thinking about buying a new TV. There will be sales again. There's probably not going to be much in the way of sales between now and the end of the year. If you buy a TV now, you run the risk of seeing a TV that's better at CES, and you'll wish you'd waited unless you've got like a 60 or 90 day return policy from the place you buy it from. You probably at this point, if you want to save money, the Super Bowl is the next kind of round of big TV sales. There's a tremendous push to reduce inventory and offer deals on televisions around the Super Bowl because people get excited about the Super Bowl because it's the Super Bowl and they want to buy a new TV. So the Super Bowl looks all Super Bowl-y. And the other thing to remember is that television prices, they tend to drop over the course of the lifespan of the television, or as the year goes, the new models get delivered. They kind of drop. They either are of such limited supply that the price never goes down, or they tend to drop over time until they're almost out of supply, and then the price tends to jack back up, unless there's a tremendous amount of supply when the new models come out, and then the old models generally get discounted heavily to clear the channel and make more room for the new models. But if you're looking for sales, the next big deal is probably going to be around the Super Bowl. If you're thinking about what's coming next year, a lot of incremental increases. I'm certainly curious to see, Samsung's going to try to beat LG. LG is going to try to maintain the lead they have in terms of, the ultimate image quality at the high end. And they have OLEDs pushed down to a fairly low price point, around a couple grand. Sony's been coming up with amazing processing, some fantastic designs, and then I'm really curious to see what TCL does, because they really, if you got $650, they can give you a great 55-inch 4K TV. So I'm very, very curious to see if they follow that up, and if they deliver larger models this year, or if they just can't get the screens they need to do that. But it's not the worst time to buy a TV, but don't expect any deals for a while, at least until after Christmas. Just wanted to get that out there, because we've had a few questions about that.
Going to CES is really bad for those people that want to buy it. For some people that want to buy a television. As an example, I have not updated my television since I started going to CES. Just because you keep seeing the amazing thing, and then by the time you get around to after the Black Friday sales, and then you're just like, well, the next CES is just around the corner. I'll go see what they have. See what's coming out there, and then just repeat the cycle again the next year. There is one storage thing that might be a thing at CES. I'm not sure how big of a story it will be when it happens. If it happens, is that there was no Samsung SSD Summit this year. And there has been pretty much every year for several years in a row, right? All the way back to like the 840. So probably see some sort of 970 or 980 Pro Evo something. We're not sure what the name will be for sure, but I mean, it's got to be coming. We've already seen the OEM versions of those start to show up in various places. So it's just a matter of time before there's a consumer version out of drive. You're really talking about incremental gains though, because the 960 Pro and Evo are already pretty dang fast as it is, and there's only so much more improvement you can do there before you can only saturate PCIe 3.0 by 4 so far, since the previous model's kind of already doing that, or at least getting close.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to CES this year, in part because I'm curious to see what the new screens look like. There's a couple of interesting speaker vendors that are going to be there. I'm curious to see what NVIDIA and AMD announce this year. That's kind of the other big thing for me. I'm kind of like, what will it be? Because AMD's had a big 2017 as far as I'm concerned. Even if I can't buy one of the new high-end GPUs, the Ryzen processors have significantly increased the speed at which I can process video, which makes me happy. So thank you AMD. I appreciate that. Oh my goodness. If you're eagerly anticipating more of the work of Mr. Al Malventano, or you miss Ryan Shrout, head on over to PCPro.com. That's where you can find their frequent and most excellent and authoritative writing on computer hardware and technology. You can find me over at techthing.com. And we talked about gaming router this week from Linksys that reduces latency, which is crazy and fun and exciting. And of course, that OnePlus 5T review I mentioned earlier. You can also find me with Robert Heron talking about televisions in audio and home theater at avxl.com. And if you want to take the time to visit us there, we would greatly appreciate it. We hope you find it as informative as you find This Week in Computer Hardware. And if you're new to This Week in Computer Hardware, do yourself a favor, head over to twit.tv/TWiCH. You're going to find all our older episodes, information on how to subscribe, and all sorts of good stuff like that. Thank you, each and every one of you, for listening. Thank you for sharing it with your friends. Thank you for joining us for the hardware ride. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Alan Montano.
Catch you next week on Twitch.